Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon. Afternoon. So did anybody prepare?
I didn't. Did you?
They came with the answers, right?
Yeah, that was the idea, right?
Cool.
We crowdsource all the innovation from these guys sitting over here. So I'm very happy we see lots of people. So what do we actually mean with crowdsourcing or innovation? But why do you speak about crowdsourcing in the first place?
Because that's where the ideas are. That's where the smart people are in the crowd.
Exactly.
We just help them make it happen, right? But the angle we're going to take here on this one is crowdsourcing obviously has very, very wide interpretations. Crowdsourcing money, crowdsourcing ideas, crowdsourcing problems. We're going to take it from the startup angle because that's sort of where we're coming from. Hopefully we've got a deck here somewhere, yeah.
Photos of us or just us?
Can we have the present? Thank you very much. Okay.
I think you're behind the, yeah.
Am I behind her? There we go. So we're talking about startups. The reason we're talking about startups.
As already introduced, I'm Elise. I've been working with startups about 9 years. I've been a founder in a startup. I've been working with hundreds of startups every year. I've been part of Garage 48 Foundation in Estonia, in Eastern Europe, organizing the hackathons also in Africa. Also supporting new innovations in New York. Today, I work in a corporate world because corporations also need to understand and they want to learn and support where the innovation comes from. And they have understood that these are the startups, actually. So they need the people who understand the field in order to be ready to support and be innovative themselves as well. What about you, Calum?
So I actually took the other angle. I actually come from a very heavy corporate background where you could actually see all the innovations stifled and nobody had the opportunity to do anything. And I've moved into the startup world to start breathing again, where there's lots of space, there's a lot of energy and excitement there. But now we're working out how we can take that back into the corporate world to help split them open from the outside. So I'm actually running the Startup Wise Guys these days, a local but regional, I guess, B2B startup accelerator. Most recently, we ran a corporate pilot with SD Telecom called VUNC that hopefully you guys have heard of. And this was our first attempt to see what it was like working directly with corporates to see if we could actually help them start innovating from the outside, start engaging with the crowd, if we could take the crowd to them. So, what do you need to do?
So basically, when you think of ideas and when you think of the startup world, where the ideas come from, then often a startup, a person who is coming up with an idea first thinks, well, I have this amazing website where I want to help apartment owners to earn money. This is just a start of the idea. What comes next needs to be much more concrete, much more in detail. And then it's about problems. The startup world always asks about problems. So what is the problem that you're solving? So apartment owners have a problem that their apartment is staying empty while they're living somewhere else. So we may help them to actually make money while we help them to solve the problem that the apartment is staying empty and just spending their money instead. That would be a simple explanation of Airbnb, for example. But at the same time, even when you have described the problem and the solution, you have to think how to access to all of these things. And what do you need for that? And that's why we will also focus on how to get data, how to get closer to your customers, get their information, because they are the ones who will know and tell you what will be the solution that you're going to build. But you also need the industry knowledge and the experience from here. So who can help you in all of those things, and what are the levels?
So yeah, if the three keys there are getting ideas or solutions to problems, and then getting the access to the resources, the customers, the expertise that you need to solve them, we can look at it from three different models. These aren't of course, exhaustive. There are lots of different ways of engaging with the crowd out there. But we're going to look at it now from 3 different models. One is for want of a better term, the traditional startup model, where you have the crowd, lots and lots of people, lots and lots of potential founders out there with fantastic ideas and solutions, searching for problems to actually solve, and then the resources they need to solve it. On another side, you've got the corporate model, where corporates quite often have these wonderful resources. They have the market expertise, they have the data, they have the customer access, but they're not quite sure what to build on top of that. And then another iteration on that is if you look at just pure competitions, where people will send out a very specific problem. And to be fair, the problem is quite often the hardest part, actually defining that. So they'll send out a very specific problem and a prize to incentivize the crowd to come in and actually solve that problem for them, quite often with their own resources. So I think this idea of you just watching me do this and then pushing forward could be a good one.
One back.
I've gone back twice. Can I go backwards? Yeah, I can go backwards. There we go.
Oh, it's delayed.
Okay.
I'm told. So we have to be patient.
How long is it so I can think ahead?
So the key one, ideas, where they come from. And lots of times they come from your personal life. You know, when you think of anything that annoys you on a daily basis, if you're a parent, you're annoyed that you can't find a babysitter. If you're living in a personal home, you're annoyed that the trash is only taken when you call them. When you go to sports clubs, you're annoyed that the trainer doesn't read the same data from your heart rate monitor as you see. So the trainer still turns on more speeder, running around, jumping around, while you would actually need calming down a little bit. So these are the things that come from your personal life. And often these are the things that people should notice more. Lots of startups, lots of companies start from a specific small personal life idea because it just annoyed me. And then you need to figure out whether it needs fixing, whether somebody else cares about it as well. At the same time, as Calum already mentioned, corporates, they have their own products, solutions, services already, millions of customers paying for that. They're making millions of dollars every day. At the same time, they also know that they need to innovate, and they need to specifically concentrate on their core competences and what they're doing. Often, it also means that they want to come up with completely new solutions without figuring out that they should constantly also make their current solutions better and think, how else can you do it? Of course, ideas can come from hot topics. Currently, everybody talks about Bitcoins. You hear a lot of different startups on these things, or crowdsourcing, for example, that we are talking about in here today as well. It's a very popular word. And when you think of any problems and go deeper into this, then problem can be something very huge, of course, you know, like, let's fix the world, let's clean the water, let's get rid of all the plastic bags, or use pure energy. But the truth is that the smallest problems, like, for example, your personal problems, they are as same valuable as the big ones. You anyway start with just one step. And at the same time, improving old industries. So again, this is one of the competencies to think about. It doesn't mean that if currently this particular way works good, that you couldn't do it even better. And that's one of the switches that a lot of people need to think about. That, okay, we're always used to with the old way. You know, we're used to how things are. And it's, I think even most of us sitting in here, we don't constantly like things changing. But the truth is that the change will make things better. And if you're part of it, then it will work also quicker and the way how you are going to solve it. And the third key that you really, really need when you come up with your idea, when you go deeper into the problem, is access. Whether you have your own access, you come from an industry, you're a biotech yourself, you're a designer who wants to build tools for other designers to make their work less time-consuming and quicker, then you will have the industry access in there. You will have access to lots of other people who will know how things are done. The industry access will not just give you the knowledge and the experience, it will also give you access to customers, for example. And that's one of the core elements that you would need to continue from here as well. Not just to sell them. First, to go to them, to ask them to speak with them, which anyway is part of a design as well. You always need to know how it works. The same thing with ideas. You need to know why it works and test whether your approach is what others would expect as well. You would also need tools. When you have the tools that will help you to reduce your costs, will give you access to new elements. If you're building hardware, you need to like very expensive tools in order to do it. Then again, that will help you. So access to different levels is very important to continue to actually work with your idea.
Actually, can I just quickly jump in here quickly as we sort of break into talking about the models? Feel very free to interact. It doesn't have to be one way here, one way this way.
No, we know the answer. Oh yeah, it was they know the answer.
They know the answer, yeah. They're the crowd, remember? They're the smart ones. But either way, yeah, if you've got anything to say, scream out. If you've got anything to add, scream out. If you disagree, shout bullshit. If you like it, clap, applaud, cheer. Go for it. If you've got questions, then we can repeat them so they're on the stream. So please do engage. Back to the models.
Come on, he's an Australian and he still hopes that Estonians show more emotion, so please help him.
We're working on it. Can we chuck stuff at them?
So what to do with your own ideas?
Was that a slow clap or a fast one? Is that where we're at? Go for it.
Some very simple tips. I don't have all the answers, but how a lot of startups, a lot of people around us do this idea crowdsourcing. Where it starts from. First of all, you have your personal idea, your corporate idea, industry idea. Write it down. Whatever it is, just write it down. The point with writing down anything will help you. It's not only about remembering. Will help you to think through the idea in words. Very shortly, but very quickly. And you have one place where it is. And pretty soon, I'm completely confident, lots of you would actually figure out, oh my God, I have like tons of different ideas every week. If only I would have time to make all of these things happen. But when some things keep on coming back, then these could be and should be the ones that you will want to concentrate. If you write them down, then sometimes you can also reread them and remember what were you thinking about and what were the next things. And then it's about sharing. That's the most important thing. Whether you crowdsource money, you crowdsource team members in your team, you always need to share. First of all, you need to tell others what you're thinking, what you're doing. And then others will start giving you bits and pieces so that your idea starts to grow and collect different things. Indiegogo, Kickstarter, all of these money collecting campaigns, they're not about getting investment money from one or two investors and convincing these guys. They are about collecting the bits and pieces from hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands of people. That's the same about building and developing your idea as well. Collecting and listening what others are thinking about it. So you need to give a food for brainstorming for others before they can give you information back and say what they think about it. Very important is to share it with people from different industries. It's very good. I think most of you here are designers. Who are not designers in here? Oh my God.
One or two.
Great, so I don't feel so bad anymore because I'm not a designer as well. When you are working in design field, for example, do not just speak with designers. You need information from people with completely different background. Just for your information, the best, the strongest startup teams are always the ones where team members come from completely different background. And not just background, they have different personalities as well. Because it's very important for growing your idea. And continue to collect. Continue to write down your ideas, or remember it somewhere, part of your head in your brain. And continue to fill your idea jar in order to build and have solutions for the next things.
So we're meant to be talking about engaging with the crowd, right?
Yeah.
How's it working
you do
for
that.
you?
No, it's your part.
Oh, it's my part?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So everybody... okay, so let's try and actually warm this up a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm not going to scare you too much. Okay, who works for a big, ugly... who works for a big corporation? Cool, and how's that going? Sorry, hands up again. Who works for a big corporation? Okay. Up the back here, or just in the middle here. How's innovation going? Or what does innovation mean in your corporation? No, that was you. Yeah. You're trying to keep up innovation there. What does innovation mean in your corporation? Corporate bullshit. It's actually quite an innovative area. They're always coming up with new ways of doing it, aren't they? Yeah, so corporations are in big trouble, right? In this day and age where in business, whoever learns fastest how to solve a customer need and how to execute on that quickly, these are the guys who are going to end up winning. These are the guys who are going to take the market and block out other people trying to get into the market or throw out people who are in the market now. And so corporations are challenged there, especially the bigger, sort of more legacy-ridden ones, your telcos, your financials and so forth. And this is because they're so bogged down in process. They're so bogged down in compliance, in execution, and so bogged down in their own hierarchies and trying to manage that. They don't have time to learn anymore. They don't have time to experiment, and they're too scared of risk. They're too scared to fail. And so they need to find some way to connect with the rest of the world, to actually do these experiments in a safe space. So I think that the popular term for this at the moment is called open innovation. There we go. That actually looks as bad as it does on my laptop, so that's good to know. I don't know if anybody can actually read what's going on here. So open innovation is a really popular concept at the moment with organizations. The concept is you actually connect up with people outside your organization to introduce new ideas, new solutions, potentially even new problems that you hadn't thought about, where you can leverage your resources to build those and execute on those solutions. So if we go back to the three keys that Elise introduced before, the idea or the solution, the problem, and the access. In this case, what the big organizations are doing is they're providing access. They have all the data, most of the data, even if they don't know how to use it. They have all the infrastructure. They have the customer access, the market access. They have all the expertise when it comes to the market itself. What they can't do is think outside that box. They can't get out of the space that they're already in. So what they can do, though, is open up these resources, be it by APIs, be it by accelerator platforms, be it by whatever. Anything that can actually get other people to engage with them, to give them ideas, to give them solutions, to give them business models that they can then test and take to their customers. And those new business models or technological models, they can then potentially either spin off and they can license them, they can license technologies to other companies, they can spin off totally new businesses out there. I think a good local example of that was Zero Turnaround, who were a relatively successful spin-off in their own right. I guess they weren't coming from a massively legacy riddled organisation, but an organisation who wasn't able to take advantage of what they had there without spinning these guys off to do their own thing. And they went on and effectively entered or created a new market. An alternative is, if there isn't a massive market opportunity alone for these new ideas, what they can do is just introduce them into their own services, into their own customer offerings, and just expand their presence in their own existing market. So, there we go, cool. So this is a really popular model at the moment, particularly in the accelerator world. In fact, all the examples I've given here, except for the Konica Minolta, these are all called accelerators of one form or another. So telcos and more recently financial organisations and banks are leading the charge in this space. So they've seen the accelerators that have happened in the startup world, the wide scope accelerators that pick up normal young startups who don't have the access already to the corporates. Startups, so accelerators like Startup Wise Guys, the way we started, like Techstars, YC, all these lots, where they don't have a particular sector, they don't have particular access to that market. What they've got is access, I guess, to expertise around how to start a startup and how to connect with these guys. So then Orange introduced Orange Fab, which has been quite successful around Europe, I'm not sure about beyond, where they bring in some cases, invest in startups that come into their accelerator. They give them access to Orange services in return for getting a piece of the pie of that startup. They've had a few sort of relative successes that come out of that, but very rarely do any of these services cross into Orange's direct offerings. What they're doing here is they're really trying to invest into new startups that will create their own new markets that Orange will have a piece of as the telco market diminishes or commoditizes over time. Wayra have also taken this approach, and Wayra have been very successful around the world for Telefonica. So Telefonica took this approach and created Wayra, the Wayra accelerator. Where Wayra has been particularly successful has been in piloting and introducing these services into their own offerings. So I think in the UK alone, 75% of the startups that Wayra has worked with have been piloted with Telefonica's own services. That means that innovation is actually pushing into Telefonica itself, either as new products, as new technologies, or just as new ways of thinking and new levels of energy coming into their space. Similar sort of thing that Wise Guys had the fortune to partner with SD Telecom locally, as they were looking to do the same thing here, and we ran the VUNC program. To date, that's not changed any services inside SD Telecom. What it has done though, is spun up at least 3 potentially extremely successful businesses, which SD Telecom is able to work with and to support through their own resources. And there's already been a little bit of an impact on the change of thinking within SD Telecom. Let me just double check that. Is anybody here from SD Telecom? Okay, has your world changed in the last 6 months? Yeah? Fantastic, that's great to hear. Okay, no. It'll take a while for it to come through. But I do know that at least at the exec level, they're looking to implement a lot of changes over the coming 6 months to 12 months. Cool. So everybody else is trying to get in on the act as well. You'll see that Disney, Barclays, Nike, and quite a few others are engaging accelerators, existing established accelerators like Wise Guys, or in this case, Techstars, to run programs of innovation for them. MasterCard is doing the same in Dublin. Ernst & Young have a slightly different approach. What they're doing is trying to leverage or revenue share, actually, new services and products that they can take to their customers. So what they're offering startups is the access not only to their customer base, but also to the social capital that Ernst & Young has with those customers. So those customers tend to trust Ernst & Young if they bring a new product to them. Trust that the startups themselves would not have if they walked up and just sort of knocked on the door of the CEO of some big company. What they also do is they spend time with the startups actually packaging them and making sure that they can articulate in a language that the CEOs or the CIOs or the CTOs that they're going to be talking with understand. And then Konica Minolta take it a little bit further with something called co-parenting or co-creation, where they actually work with other service providers, others who would potentially be competitors for Konica Minolta. And they also come up with problems. So unlike the Techstars, Disney Accelerator, Barclays Accelerator, Orange Fab, where the startups aren't given a particular problem to work with, but just the resources to build it, Konica Minolta actually comes with particular problems or problematic areas that they want to work on. They build partnerships with a community of like-minded big companies, and they then engage with startups on the outside to try and deliver some of these ideas and some of these solutions for them. So then, the next model, if you take it a bit further, quite often, as I say, the biggest problem that startups have is identifying the problem that they're fixing. They come up with wonderful solutions, right? And one of the biggest problems that they have is then trying to work out somebody who can use that solution. And it's really hard to convince them of this case. And I'm sorry to tell you, if you've got a great idea, but you actually haven't started from the problem, then you're probably going to have to iterate quite a few times until you actually find that problem solution fit that you really, really need. So what prizes do is they start with a very clearly defined specific problem. That problem could be something as simple as getting to Mars, or something more complicated, like how do we use CO2 emissions effectively? How do we use them for meaningful purposes instead of damaging the environment as they are at the moment? So I've run way ahead of myself here. Apologies. That's why it's good. That's pretty cool, actually. So he's into that. That's awesome.
You should talk about it.
Really? Didn't it? Okay, cool. Okay, who's heard of the Singularity University? Hey, Tahan said that.
Okay, keep it.
Thank you. So who's heard of Singularity University?
There was somebody.
We've got a few here. Okay, so the Singularity University was created in the US, actually probably in San Francisco, to take on the big problems in the world, the really, really big, gnarly problems that are going to hit us. Everything around climate change through to how do we get to another planet? How do we establish life on another planet? It was founded by a guy called Peter Diamandis, who has this wonderful idea of abundance and that everything here is actually available in the world. We can do this if we just harness the right resources. It's got a pretty decent board of trustees for the likes of Larry Page, Elon Musk, and so forth are on there. These are guys who want to solve the biggest problems in the world, who want to come up with really, really disruptive ideas. And the way they do this is by offering a big pot of money. So the first one they started with was you've probably heard of the space challenge, or it was actually less well known as the Ansari X Prize. So the idea here was who could actually build a commercially viable passenger space jet. So one that could take off, land, go in and out of space. The guys who won it included Paul Allen, one of the Microsoft co-founders. The company was later then backed by Richard Branson and is now known as Virgin Galactic. And obviously they're trying to speed up investment to actually make space travel, commercial space travel, a reality for all of us. The way they did this is they said, okay, this is what we want you to do. Here are the criteria, a very well-defined problem, and solution criteria. The ship had to be able to take off, go into space, return to Earth, and take off again, repeat that loop within 2 weeks. I think it took about 8 years for them to be able to build a ship and actually do this. But they did it. And the great thing is, okay, so they were able to put together a 10 million pot of money as the prize. But you can imagine, actually, well, that sounds like a lot of money. That's not a lot of money to build and test a spaceship. So whilst most of the guys who went into this race actually thought that that money would cover their costs for actually building and winning the competition, and ultimately building a business model that they could then go on with and make money, the reality is nearly all of them well and truly overspent that 10 million to build their spaceships. And so the combined pot, then you can imagine, where people were spending many X times the actual prize money to resolve the problem, and bringing in a lot more resources that any one organization or any one person, no matter how successful they are, could actually bring to the table to solve the problem. And they solved it from lots of different angles as well. So you brought lots of different people, lots more money, and as a result, oh, thank you. So lots of different resources, lots of different money. Basically, the investment for them was extremely efficient. They were able to solve this problem for a lot less than they would have had to have done otherwise. And they've come up with far smarter ideas to come in and do this. And so X Prize is not now just limited to space travel. They're trying to solve marine ecosystem issues. They're trying to solve... one of the quickest ones they did was trying to work out how to clean up the oil spills, I think in the Gulf of Mexico. They're also working now on, and have I got this one? Doesn't matter. No, that's the next one. Okay, they're also trying to work on, as I said, how to use CO2 emissions and actually turn them into meaningful resources that we can build glasses with, build buildings with, whatever, but they don't pollute the atmosphere. So this is a really, really cool platform. Oh, was that you or me? That wasn't me. Yeah. Okay. So bringing that back down to a more sort of manageable level for people like us is evolution. The reason I know about these guys is actually an ex-member of the Startup Wise guys, Chris, was part of Evolution in New York. So what these guys do is they crowdsource solutions for brands in the US. So a brand like a Nestle or somebody like this will come up to them and say, we have X problem, or we need X solution to enter a new market. What Evolution do is they go out and they raise a competition for startups. Quite often in this region, they'll run a competition with startups to narrow it down to about 5 startups who they think can actually solve the problem for the brand that they're working for. They then work with those startups for a period of time to polish their pitches, to get them in the right space, then put them before the brand who's paying for it. The startups then pitch to the brand will choose one of the startups that they will then fund that startup to build the solution for them. So in this case, what they're doing is they're not only bringing in the problem, the well-defined problem for the startups to work on, but they're actually bringing in the resources as well. So this is a combination or I guess an extension of the corporate model and the prize model put together. So how's that going? Any interjections yet? Oh, you're so well behaved. So where the hell's the crowd in all of this? So the crowd sort of tends to move around. It's rather nebulous, as one of my colleagues likes to say. With the initial model we started with, the standard sort of startup founder model, the crowd are the startups. They're the ones who are generating new ideas, searching for new problems, looking for new angles for coming in. But of course, they're starved quite often of access to resources. When you look at the corporate model, the crowd is still the startups, but now they've got a more defined framework to work in. They may not have the problems, but they'll often have a particular vertical or industry they can work with. They now have access to resources. And then when you move to the prize, you've got crowds on both sides, really. You've got you've got organizations or individuals who've got a particular problem they want to solve that they can then throw out onto a prize platform. And then on the other side, you've got all these creative geniuses around the world, the sort of people who probably don't want to work in a big organization, and they may not be wanted in that big organization either because they just don't fit the model, or they're too young, or they're too old, whatever it is. These guys can be brought from the crowd to that platform to spin up the new ideas off the back of that. Cool, so what happens next? Once you've gone out, you've got your problem, you've got access to resources to determine whether it's a problem worth solving, and you've gone and built your solution, or at least you think you have. How do you go next on to validating that? How do you go out and test how that works? So a conventional way, at least it has become over the last sort of 5-6 years, for startups is to go to a startup accelerator, be it a Techstars, a Wise Guys, whatever, where we bring in effectively a curated crowd of mentors, of our partners, to come and help you look at your solutions and see if they're worth actually continuing and helping you actually get them out into the real world for people to try out. Alternatively, who here knows beta list? Beta list. A little tickle over here. Product hunt. Wow, cool. Kickstarter. Right, Indiegogo. All right, we're starting to happen now, cool. Okay, so beta list is a great platform if you have a new product or new idea that you want to push out there, but it's not ready yet and you don't want to invest the resources into building it until you've validated it, which is normally a really good idea. You can throw it onto beta list. Beta list is a large crowd, normally of small businesses, who are looking for solutions to their problems, but they know when they go onto beta list, if they look at a solution or a business that's on there, they know that the product is not going to be completed, is going to potentially be buggy, but is there for their feedback. And so these guys are actively there with a problem they want to help you solve. So beta list is a really good place to put nascent ideas or nascent products up onto. Product hunt, on the other hand, is once you've got a polished model. It doesn't have to be complete, but a polished product that you now want to scream out to the world and get feedback as quickly as possible. And so now you see that the crowd has moved from being the startups and the creators to the consumers. You're now validating it against these the people who will ultimately, hopefully, pay for your product. And so Product Hunt is a great way to do this. If you can get into the top 10 in Product Hunt, you've got a guaranteed massive amount of feedback coming back at you. So be ready for it, because it might not all be good. And of course, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you know, where you can get people to commit by actually putting money into your product or into your campaign. That's a really great way of validating whether people care about it or not. But just be careful with that one as well, because quite often the people on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're not going to be your ultimate customers. They might be early adopters, or they might be people who are who quite like the idea, but actually they're not the ones who are going to use it in real life. Just don't be too distracted by the feedback you get from these guys. It just shows that there's somebody out there who's interested in doing it. So what happens next?
So why did we tell you all about the corporates, the startups, the accelerators, going to Kickstarter, and then we called it crowdsourcing innovation? The point is that, yeah, we would like to have you all building startups, of course, but that's not the main focus in here. The focus is how those startuppers approach their daily life, how they approach the problems that they have every day, even after they have built a startup that makes money. So this is why they need these approaches from different people, and they need access to resources, and they need the tools, which are the same ways that you need as well when you're building solutions for your everyday, your work life, your personal life, or anything else that you come together with. And taking some of the tips from here are very important to understand that, first of all, sharing your ideas, whatever they're about, whether they are the issues that you're solving at work or they are your personal things, that will give you solutions. Does anybody know the feeling like when you go to somebody and you ask like, Calum, do you have advice for me? How could I solve 2 plus 2? And you have the answer already while you ask the question. So that's one of the points of sharing your things. It's not about believing anything that you hear from the crowd, like Calum said. Feedback is not the right thing. The next thing after the feedback is to understand and analyze why it happened and why the feedback is positive or negative, so how you can reuse that. Which means that at the end of the day, where you should mostly crowdsource anything related to your ideas is just going out and listening to your customers, your clients, and your users.
I think the last slide's mine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.